Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Healthy Conversations. I'm your host, Travis Christofferson. Today, our guest is Jamie Reno, who is one of America's most accomplished journalists. He is also a best-selling author and award-winning songwriter. He was a national correspondent for 23 years with Newsweek, where he covered everything from the Iraq wars, Afghanistan wars, 9/11, White House, biotechnology, cancer, many other topics. He has also edited and written for such publications as the New York Times, International Business Times, the Daily Beast, the Los Angeles Times, and USA Today. He has won more than 160 writing awards from the Society of Professional Journalists and the Press Club. He's a four-time winner of the Press Club's Best in Show Award, and as a lead reporter on the Newsweek investigative series on the 9/11 terrorist attacks, he and his colleagues won the prestigious magazine award for general excellence. He is also a three-time cancer survivor. Jamie, when he learned of his diagnosis and traveled through the journey of being a cancer patient, he switched from covering the wars in Iraq and these other topics to cancer and became a reporter for Healthline, America's #1 health site. He also became a tireless patient advocate, which we talk a lot about. Jason, he's partnered on patient-focused educational initiatives with such organizations as Teen Cancer America, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, Lymphoma Research Foundation, Steps for Living, Children's Treehouse Foundation, and the American Cancer Society, and many other groups. And as you'll see in this interview, Jamie has got a very unique perspective from being an investigative journalist for so long and being a cancer survivor for over 20 years that went through multiple reoccurrences along the way. So this sort of investigative journalistic approach, coupled to his life story, brings a very unique perspective. And I think there's a lot to learn in this conversation from anybody who's going through a cancer diagnosis or has a loved one that is going through this process. And finally, this interview series is brought to you by AVERT. AVERT is a physician-led prevention program within Stage 0 Life Sciences. AVERT centers on the detection of the earliest predictive markers of chronic disease using a comprehensive blood panel of markers looking at inflammation and metabolic function. This program is a unique collaboration of physicians and scientists, which this is something Jamie and I also talk about, how this unique collaboration is so critical for top-notch healthcare. And the very specific mission of the AVERT program is just to keep people healthy, very simple. So without further delay, let's get to our interview with Jamie Reno. Jamie, thanks for taking the time for this interview today.
My pleasure. It's good to be here.
So you've had an amazing career. I've spent obviously the last few days reading a lot of your articles. And, I got to admit, I'm jealous. The life of an investigative journalist, just to me, it invokes those images of the newsroom and the excitement of being on cutting edge, everything that's happening in the world. Is it as glamorous as it seems?
It is until you look at my paycheck. No, I'm kidding. It's I love being a journalist. It's one of the things that I've always wanted to do. Even as a kid watching Watergate, I was probably 11 years old or 12 when Nixon resigned, and I was ironically or not, I was mostly reading the Newsweek coverage of that event, and it took me. I guess it was about 15 years later when I became a Newsweek journalist, but it was always in the back of my mind that was the magazine that I always read as a kid. So it has been, I don't know how glamorous, but it's definitely been rewarding, covering our troops, covering 9/11, covering really big stories. It's been really everything I hoped it would be, covering politics, but a lot of other things too. I've covered entertainment and lifestyles, and now health, of course, is my main topic. So it's been a little bit of all over the place in a good way.
And you had a shift. So you were covering a lot of things you were just talking about, wars, White House, lots of things. And then you made a shift into healthcare and started working at Healthline. And that comes with a very personal story and as a cancer survivor.
Yeah.
And so you were in the prime of your life, I believe it was your mid-30s, and you were slammed with it always comes in an inopportune time, but it seemed especially so in your case. And that really had a big shift in your career, in your life, frankly. So you want to talk a little bit about that story?
No, sorry, I can't. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yes, I talk about it a lot because I'm really proud to have become an advocate for cancer patients over the years. And yeah, I was 34 and engaged to be married, living on the beach in San Diego, writing for Newsweek with the girl of my dreams. Suddenly I felt a lump. And like a lot of stupid people, I didn't have it looked at right away. I just thought, nah, I'm too young. I don't have cancer. Of course I did. I had stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. They said I was going to live 3 to 5 years. I was 34 years old at the time, and I was like, wow, so I went through chemo. We had a big wedding planned the following spring. We canceled that wedding and had a no frills wedding down in the county building with my sister tagging along because my wife, my fiance, Gabriella, wanted to go through my cancer as my wife, not my girlfriend. So I picked an angel. She could have walked away, I would have followed her anyway, but she could have walked away. But no, she was just, I want to be your wife. I want to go through it officially with you, yeah. So then the cancer came back a few years later. And this time I instead of doing chemotherapy, this time I was much more armed and ready. I was more myself again. And I had done a lot of research and I found a clinical trial of a radioimmunotherapy called Bexar, and it saved my life. And my oncologist now to this day think that I am cured of this basically incurable type of lymphoma. And I could talk a long time about that drug that I did in that clinical trial, which a drug company shelved. They got rid of it for all the wrong reasons, and that really upset me. And that was part of the reason. That's when I sort of said, I want to pivot from covering 9/11, covering that kind of story. And I still love to do that. I still love in-depth journalism like that. But I really wanted to focus on writing about health, specifically cancer. So that became the primary focus of my life, writing about cancer, writing books about cancer, even attaching in my other life, I'm a singer-songwriter, and a lot of those projects are attached to cancer causes, whether it's helping kids who have a parent with cancer, because I've seen what my daughter went through when I was going through it. So it's really hard on the families, obviously.
Did you feel, you obviously felt a sense of urgency?
Yeah, it is a cliche, but when you deal with the C word, it's, everything is sped up a little bit, and you kind of wonder, how long am I going to be here? So I'm going to do some of the things that I've always wanted to do because I'm on the clock. I'm on the clock now. Now that it's been, 20 years later, I finally can exhale, sort of, and say, maybe I am going to be here for a while. But now I'm older, so there's that too. So, I just try to, it is a cliche, but I just try to enjoy every day, make the best of every day, because it could be your last day. It is utterly cliche, but it's totally true.
Well, I've heard many patients say they wouldn't change it. The way it's changed their lives, that they almost started living at that point, which is a strange thing to think that we could actually be that asleep until we're forced to kind of take life in a more visceral level. But I want to go back to that, the drug that you took. Now, you found that clinical trial on your own, and your oncologist didn't suggest it. In fact, he actively tried to dissuade you from doing it. Is that right?
He did. That was not my current oncologist, but for the record, the one now is wonderful. But this guy, he wasn't a bad guy. He just wasn't aware of a lot of the clinical trials out there. And I was, and I told him, no, I'm sorry, but I've made my decision. But yes, you're right. He tried to talk me out of it, but he didn't. It wasn't like he kept trying. He knew I was resolute. He knew I was determined to take this drug. And I think it saved my life. I really do.
Well, when you look at the data behind it, it's numerous studies, and you wrote this, I think, in one of your blogs, that showed in the drugs called Bexar,
With two X's, yes,
with two X's, that it gives non-Hodgkin's lymphoma patients longer remissions than any other treatment, including the standard of care, fewer side effects.
Right.
And so it begs this question, where did it go and why? And it looked like to me that there was many sort of sources to that, one of them being that oncologists just simply didn't prescribe it because it's difficult. You can't do it in office. It takes, you have to go to a nuclear medicine branch. So do you have any clarity on why that just sort of disappeared? I mean, clearly a superior drug, right?
So it's controversial, to be honest, because the truth is a lot of oncologists, and some of them did this because of the unfamiliarity with the drug, but some of them also didn't tell their patients about this drug because they knew they would lose them as a patient because of what you just said. The nuclear medicine thing required, some oncology offices had that requirement, but many didn't. And because of that, I think it's a combination of infamiliarity with the drug, and simply not wanting to lose your patient. And that makes you start thinking about the money side, which is really cynical. And most oncologists I've met are not like that. They want to help you. But it was dismaying that a lot of oncologists just wouldn't go there. They wouldn't even tell their, and here's another issue, and it's still a problem now. A lot of cancer offices, even really top-notch ones, most of the really top-notch ones now are okay, but a lot of cancer clinics, they don't have one person whose only job is to stay up with the latest clinical trials, the latest research. And there's so much of it now, more than ever. We are in the golden age truly now of cancer research and advancement. And yet a lot of clinics just can't keep up because they're busy with patients, right? I mean, it's understandable why they can't keep up, but that's not what you want to hear as a patient. You want to know all of your options. And again, I have so many friends who are oncologists who are truly, truly good people. Most of them are. But it's very frustrating when you are just a Joe Blow out there and you bring this trial to your doctor and say, I want to do this. And your doctor says, well, I don't know about this drug. And it's my body. It's ultimately my decision. If I can get into the trial, I'm going to do it. And I encourage that. I encourage people to respect their doctors always, but I also encourage them to do their own research. And if you're literally too sick, find somebody who can help you do that. Your sibling or your best friend or someone, your dog, I don't know, somebody. Just do it.
Yeah.
Find out what's out there.
There's a huge, I think, asymmetry in medicine. And I think you and I talked about this last time we spoke about, back in the olden days, a doctor could practice medicine because it was so much less complex. And we've carried that ethos of this ultimate autonomy with the single doctor, where it's become so complex that we need, for lack of a better word, ecosystems, other people to specialize in certain things. And that's one of the things that strikes me is the awareness of what's out there. It can't just be one person. And typically, right, it seems to fall on behoove the families and the people if they have time to dig in the literature and find things out. So how do you, you have such a unique perspective as doing this for so long and being, in the system as well.
Yeah.
Did you see a way to solve, a way forward for that? Just institutional change?
I'm glad you asked me that because I'm sort of in the process of doing something really, really meaningful about this, which is I'm going to eventually, and someone's probably going to steal it from me. And if they do, that'd be fine. Whoever gets it done, gets it done. But I want to work, because as a journalist, I've covered politics a lot. and I know how the lobbying world works. And I've always thought for many years that every cancer hospital or every cancer clinic, I should say, should have one person at least whose sole job is to sit in front of that computer all day and talk to other doctors all day about all the latest clinical trials. Because nothing advances in cancer unless we do clinical trials, and patients are never going to learn about these drugs if it's the same system over and over. Again, I don't want this to be anti-oncologist at all. It's actually pro-oncologist, because my take has always been oncologists are so busy spending time with patients, especially in academic, because they literally overbook. I got a secret for you. Cancer clinics that are academic overbook, and then they also have lots of students with them all day long. So they literally don't have time to go back into their office at the end of the day and look up, clinicaltrials.gov and just start digging through it every day. Yeah. And that's a shame. That's a shame, because we all miss out when we don't know about these trials. Right. If I had done chemo again, I don't think you and I'd be talking right now. I really don't. And I would love to lobby for a bill that would pay every cancer clinic. There'd be federal legislation that would pay them, at least pay one or two doctors to just focus on trials. I think it would really change things in some ways.
Yeah, I think you'll appreciate this. I knew we were going to talk about this.
Does that make sense to you, that legislation?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I actually, I knew we'd talk about this. So I remember reading an article about this a long time ago, and I found it. It was in 2008 in the New York Times. And it was an article, it was titled, "How to Take American Healthcare from Worst to First." And the authors it was actually Newt Gingrich, John Kerry, and then Billy Beane of the Oakland A's, the general manager of the Oakland A's, the three authors. And the reason
Moneyball guy.
Moneyball, right. Yeah. And the reason he was there is because if you've seen Moneyball, or the listeners, it's about they shifted from having talent scouts pick their players to a purely statistical method, right? Yeah. And so they were able to take their team with the second lowest budget in baseball. The New York Yankees was 3 times their budget and win more games than the New York Yankees in most years when they first started doing this. Yeah. So the point is they were cutting through all the bias, right? So this article, there was a quote, it says, "Remarkably, a doctor today can get more data on the starting third baseman of his fantasy baseball team than on the effectiveness of life and death medical procedures. Studies have shown that most healthcare is not based on clinical studies of what works best and what does not. Instead, most care is based on informed opinion, personal observations, or tradition." So I think this speaks exactly to what you're talking about. In an article, then they proposed doing something exactly what you're talking about, having a team, maybe not a single individuals, but a panel that would do just what you're saying. Wow. And you can think of so many examples, Jamie, one comes to mind where it was tradition to remove a kidney in advanced kidney cancer. Right. Just surgery, you take it out. Then they found out that the chemotherapy that they were getting anyway was just as good as that surgery. So for decades, surgeons performed all those unnecessarily. You can go down the list. The radical mastectomy went on for 50 years before clinical trials showed it was entirely unnecessary. So it's a huge gap. And that seems like
you said 2008 was this? The article was 2008.
That was 2008. It's been that long.
I was covering John Kerry at that time. And
is that right?
If I had seen that, I covered his campaign. And a couple funny stories. I really liked him, and I actually enjoyed covering him. He was considered a real stiff. From the public thought, oh gosh, John Kerry, he's a dullard. But I knew a different side of him while covering his campaign and meeting his family, his daughter especially. He was on a plane on the campaign, one of his presidential campaigns, talking to me, and this was the first time he had talked to me. We talked many times more after that, but he was looking at the internet at the same time that he was talking to me, and he said, Mr. Reno, are you the country singer? And I said, no, Senator, it's country. I said, it's country rock, actually. He found my website, and on my music site, JamieReno.com, it's a music site, and he saw me with a guitar. He was holding a guitar in his hand at the time, or in the next chair next to him in the plane. So he picked up his guitar and we started jamming together on song. I mean, it's like, nobody knows this side of John Kerry, you know?
That's fantastic.
Not that I was, I wasn't like trying to get him elected. I just thought it was interesting how different some of these people are in private than they are publicly, because he started playing some country songs. I just thought, this is completely out of the blue, but and that's also a complete non sequitur to what we were talking about. But I just wanted to share that with you because
no, that's great. It's always good to add a little color to people's personalities. Yeah, you're right. His public persona would be totally different from that.
Kind of a stiff, you know, and he's really got a good sense of humor. That's interesting to hear that it was Kerry and Newt Gingrich. So it was a bipartisan bill, obviously.
Right.
I want to pursue that and see where it is now. You know,
well, I thought that was absolutely fascinating, especially having Billy Bean in there. Those three working together. But
it's an interesting threesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Well, so I also found you wrote another article, and I'm not sure which publication it was in about the rise in integrative oncology. And I was kind of
probably Healthline.
Yeah, I think it was Healthline. Yeah. And I was kind of surprised to learn that 50% of I don't know if it's academic hospitals or just hospitals and oncology centers in general now have a integrative medicine branch. Yes. And we talked about how a little time you get with an oncologist, and it's, I'm sure, befuddling and frightening. And did you employ any other integrative sort of methods?
Yeah, it's kind of a long story. I won't bore you with it, but the bottom line is I've tried anything and everything to stay alive, anything within reason anyway, including a lot of holistic things. I tried something called DCA, which is a type of acid, which there have been trials on this that show that it has a strong impact on blood cancers. I think that may have saved my life once upon a time. I've tried, I've gone gluten-free. I've done a lot of things, health-wise, diet-wise. I just try to stay healthy as best I can, exercise. But it's interesting when you say that half of the hospitals have integrative healthcare, but that could mean anything from really deeply involved in clinical trials to having a massage class. It could kind of run the spectrum of whatever integrative might mean to you. Some of them are just kind of paying lip service, but some of them, and I think UCSD, Morris Cancer Center, which is my cancer hospital, giving them a plug because they've kept me alive all these years. They are really serious about integrative medicine. They really believe in it. And they're not so are many other cancer hospitals, but they definitely are focused on combining, all these natural things with more traditional medicine.
Yeah, and I think just being involved with people, we're learning so much more about the science of stress and loneliness, and I've gotten really interested in that. And the data is actually fascinating. There was a study of 100 or 10,000 breast cancer patients, and the researchers linked isolation with a 40% higher risk of cancer reoccurrence. And so just being, I think, if you're involved in sort of integrative things with other people, that's a form of healthcare. You don't feel as isolated. Yeah.
It's healing. It's healing for sure.
Yeah. Jamie, you've done a ton of obviously patient advocacy work with many pharmaceutical companies, all kinds of organizations on educational initiatives. So from your 30,000 foot view, we've covered some of this, but what advice do you have for cancer patients and cancer survivors as they're moving through that?
Well, one of the things I would say right off the bat is you consider second opinions, respect your doctor, but learn all of your options, and that includes what we just talked about with integrative and so-called alternative medicine, whatever that is, because I think alternative medicine in many cases is what the Hippocratic Oath. Hippocrates was a doctor, right? And a lot of his stuff was holistic. So, I think some of the stuff now is less real medicine than some of the original stuff. But regardless, I would say, don't, get second opinions, get out there and obviously with the internet, it's become both easier and harder, I think, because there's so much information. It's overwhelming, so I try to help people as best I can to separate the wheat from the chaff and really get into the nitty gritty of what you need and what you want. Because, there's so much out there. But I would highly recommend you at least, do some research. Don't take your doctor's word as gospel. Don't be, be nice, be respectful, but it's your body. You're making the ultimate decision about your body. And I'm not talking about, intervectin and all this, pseudoscience. I don't mean that stuff.
Right.
We could go down that road today too, but because I've been covering COVID since day one also. And
especially with regard to cancer patients, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. And that there's some real, unfortunate players in that arena that tout the drugs that just don't have any science behind them. So be careful, be really careful about, what you believe, who do you believe in terms of, I understand people are skeptical about government. I understand that, but for the most part, FDA and these organizations really are doing their job, to keep us safe. They're scrutinizing trials. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's the short answer.
Yeah, it's when you look at the history of medicine, I go way back to when the other sciences were sprinting, medicine was barely crawling. We did bloodletting and tiffany, cutting holes in skulls to let spirits out for a long time. And the first
I think there was another one in Florida last week, actually.
It wouldn't surprise me. Florida, yeah.
I'm kidding. I love you, Florida. Sorry.
We know where you're not going on vacation this year. But the first clinical trial wasn't done until the mid 40s. And there's a reason why the gold standard is a double-blind placebo control. We learn these things the hard way.
Yeah.
And so you're absolutely right. That kind of data is critical. You can get clues from non-standard data, but it doesn't mean they're going to be right.
No, the trials exist for a reason.
They exist for ivermectin. It would have surprised. I would not have been shocked either way. When they finally did these most recent trials, if it had efficacy, I would not have been shocked. If it didn't, I wouldn't have been shocked. So you just have to be totally open.
We didn't know.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. And you can't do shortcuts to that either.
No, they're brutally hard trials. They're expensive. They take a long time. And that's why I think there's a lot of frustration around that.
I was lucky in my trial, though, in that it was a late stage 3 trial. So there was a lot of data already that showed how this was really working on lymphoma patients. It wasn't a phase 1 trial or even a phase 2. So I felt very confident that it was going to work for me. I hoped.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, it's always a hope. Yeah. Now, okay. So Jamie, you've gotten really, I guess, interested or passionate about early detection and the technology and how that's evolved. And I think there's, the value of early detection is undeniable for certain cancer types. And the science, has brought us to an amazing place with liquid biopsies. And you've been covering a lot about these.
Yeah.
How do you see this technology ultimately changing oncology? And do you think it will?
Yes. Short answer is I do think it will. There's a lot more work that has to be done in trials and in the lab. But we now know, and I'm talking like I'm a scientist now, but I'm so deeply involved in this that I feel like I'm allowed to say that because I've studied it so much. We now know that this technology works. Mm-hmm. We now know that you can find these biomarkers in your blood that are coming from cancer in your body, and it can tell you a very, very early detection of cancer. It can even tell you where in the body the cancer is sometimes. It's remarkable technology, and it's so non-invasive. It's so easy. It's a simple blood draw rather than, most cancers don't have any really solid biopsy, but the ones that do, colorectal and mammograms, these are very invasive, as opposed to a simple blood test, which possibly will tell us even more than a tissue sample, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's really not. This is the DNA coming off the cancer into your blood. So it's very reliable in terms of what it is. This works in a variety of cancers. It looks like it's going to be viable in virtually every type of cancer. I had a blood cancer, and ironically, blood cancer is maybe one of the last people to come to this, last types of cancer to come to the table. But they are now. They're now seeing that process even in blood cancers. You'd think it would be the first because of the blood thing, but there's really not really a correlation there. But the bottom line is, we've had companies like, well, I won't name any one specific, but I've been covering this for about 3 years as a journalist. I've been covering precision medicine, as we call it. And a big component of precision medicine is early detection, liquid biopsy. And so I decided about 6 months ago that I wanted to really do a focused summit. There have been other summits on liquid biopsy, but they've all been what I call scientific log rolling. The scientists are talking to each other. But we decided for this one, I'm partnering with Teen Cancer America, which is a tremendous nonprofit that supports teens and young adults with cancer, the AYA group. It was founded by Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend of The Who, the legendary band.
Who?
Exactly. Yeah.
You're going to have to explain who that is to the younger folks.
I know.
Teen Cancer America.
I've learned that even younger folks know who The Who is for whatever reason. The Who is ubiquitous.
Yeah.
But how cool is it that I'm working with Roger Daltrey now? It's just,
that's awesome.
And he's such a kind, good guy too, and he really cares about this. They started this 30+ years ago in the UK because they wanted to give back to their fans. That age group is what made them rich and famous, and they're still helping that age group. And now Teen Cancer America is the US version. They've been around for over a decade, and Simon Davies, who's the executive director, and I have basically partnered on this project. We call it the S.E.E. Summit, and it's S.E.E., and that's safer, easier, earlier detection. And what this is going to do is it's going to, because if you catch your cancer really early, your odds of surviving skyrocket. It's really dramatic in terms of the difference. Yeah. It's always so often just a local surgery. Sometimes you don't even have to treat right away. So we believe, and again, we still have more work to do, but we really believe now that it's going to change the entire paradigm, because liquid biopsy can also show recurrence. It can also show which treatment would work the best. There are several other things that you can do with liquid biopsy, but the one that I get the most excited about is detecting really early cancer.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's just amazing. So
yeah, it's I think everybody that studies cancer, you realize that stage 4 is just almost categorized as a different disease than early stage.
Absolutely.
And it gives you an opportunity to treat it when it's far less aggressive. And what's interesting to me is think of the clinical trials you can organize with that. If you can, find people very early, stage 1, and then test interventions that could have a potency at that point to prevent progression from that point. So yeah, it opens up tremendous opportunities. Now, this summit, so it's educational to the public.
Yes.
They can learn about the utility of these. And
we're trying to so we have 10 companies that are in the liquid biopsy space, and they're each unique. each one of them has a little bit different technology, but they're all in the same general area. They're all making liquid biopsies work for patients. And it's going to be April 21st. It's going to be online. It's going to be a Zoom, very simple. But each company is presenting their technology, how it works, and what it could potentially mean for patients. And each company, and we've been talking with all these companies and working with them right now, and it's really exciting because these are really dedicated people who are very excited about their technology because they've seen it work in the lab. Again, I do know that we need more trials. We're going to be very responsible about what we say to the public about this. But I know that it works. I've seen it, in trials and in results. I've seen results. I've seen people's lives saved already by this, and that's already in the clinic in many places. It's a little bit different than a drug. This is a blood test, so it doesn't have the exact same types of rigorous. It's still rigorous, but it's different. You can get some things in a clinic even before it is quote unquote FDA approved, right. But it has to be very, very carefully managed. But it's a simple blood test. It's not going to harm you. It's a simple blood draw.
Right.
So I'm very excited about this. I really think it's going to. I believe it has the potential to save lives and to really change the entire treatment, recurrence, early detection. The entire paradigm is going to change, I believe.
Yeah. It's amazing when these new technologies come out. They how fast they come and how quickly they improve.
Yeah.
And it'll our kids, it'll be amazing. They will just go in, I'm sure someday, and it'll be a routine part of their annual physical.
Yeah.
It'll be a liquid biopsy. Yeah.
It's true. It's going to be very simple, I think. They're not, and no one is proposing that we get rid of the other types of tests. No one's saying that they should go away, but this is so much more, so much less invasive, and potentially even far greater, much more information than what you get from a tumor, which is really, it seems counterintuitive, but as I said, it's really happening in the lab, and now it's beginning to happen in the clinic.
Yeah, no, it's extremely exciting.
It is.
Well, so tell folks where they just look it up online. Safer, easier, earlier.
Yeah, you can just email me if you want. You can just email jreno at san.rr.com or contact Team Cancer America.
Team Cancer America.
They're based in Los Angeles, and they would be happy to tell you what they know and how you can help, how you can get involved in this.
Fantastic. Well, Jamie, I want to thank you so much for your time, sharing all your knowledge, your experiences, and where this is moving to. It's extraordinarily exciting.
Well, I really appreciate you've done your homework. I appreciate it.
Oh no, it's your articles are absolutely fascinating, and your blog, people can go to it's the Reno Dispatch.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a wonderful blog, and I think you do monthly.
Sometimes every day, sometimes monthly. It just depends on what else
inspiration
I have going on.
Yeah.
We've actually won about 30 press club and SBJ awards for our blog. So it's a real news site, and we've covered a lot of broken stories on there. So, and I'm enjoying. I like to keep my hand in investigative journalism as much as I can, and I'm kind of busy right now with my patient advocacy, but I'm still a journalist, and I'll always be a journalist.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't change now. It's too long.
Too late.
Well, thanks for everything you do. Thank you so much. And it's been fantastic getting to know you and chat with you.
Thanks, Travis. It's great to talk to you, man.
Yeah. All right, Jamie. Take care.
You too.